Hello and welcome to the Old Man Orange podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I'm Dave Candido.
We are back again for number 4. The Mortal Kombat Legends movies, this time Cage Match, the Johnny Cage 1980s experience. Dude, Dave, what did you think of this one now?
Fantastic. It's, once again, I've said this for each movie after Scorpion's Revenge. You know, I like this one even better. This one's my favorite. This one absolutely is my favorite. I feel like preemptively I'm going to say it's my favorite of all the Legends movies because from what I understand, from what I could dig up through research, it's probably the last one. There was supposed to be a Kitana one in the works following the Cage Match, but that sucks. But yeah, no, this is definitely my favorite. I love the art. It's like watching a live comic book. It's so vivid and nice. Like it's funny, while we were watching it, the colors, how vibrant it is and everything, the fast paced, it actually made me think of some of the Dragon Ball Super episodes, except I think the art's way better. And some of those sequences in DB Super, it almost looks a little lazy, but that's a comment and a conversation for another video. But no, it was really visually pleasing to say the least, and the story I thought was good. And I read up on the movie before we watched it, just some reviews and stuff. It was actually when I was looking to see if there was going to be more, and people were really trashing this one, saying like, oh, they should have quit after the Battle of the Realms, and Cage Match was the worst. It's like a cheesy action movie that's whatever. But I mean, I would really hope that whoever watched this film would expect it to be like an 80s action movie. It's Johnny Cage. Yeah. It's kind of bizarre that you wouldn't imagine that it wouldn't be full of cheesy one-liners, action movie worthy karate, and just I want to say at least a halfway decent story, being that it's in the Mortal Kombat universe.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those ones where it's like, it's just aping a fun 80s adventure. I mean, the thing even starts off on Christmas Day, like it's Die Hard or Lethal Weapon or something like that, and just the look and feel. It has like almost that kind of art style. I mean, in like 2D, but like that vibe of Vice City / Miami Vice.
I kept thinking GTA Vice City, so much so that I don't know why I had the idea. I mean, the guy's a movie star. I should have immediately, had the idea like that it's in LA, but I kept thinking Miami, which I'm sure there's movies shot there. I was thinking Miami, not Hollywood, California. But no,
it's that ironic thing that like when they make things look very beach-like in like animation form and so on, and they kind of design Hollywood in that style. That's not what Hollywood. That's not what Los Angeles truly looks like. You know what I mean?
No.
But maybe Miami probably doesn't truly look like
a little less colorful, or at least a different kind of colorful.
Yeah, it's definitely like gray tones and so on like that, more than
gray tones, brown tones.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot
tones.
of like a vibrant colors actually in Los Angeles. Maybe there was in the 80s. I don't know. It's probably the same way. If I went to like Miami, I feel like I'd be very disappointed. I'd be like, this is nothing like Scarface. I feel like that'd be my first. That's why I feel like I almost shouldn't go to Miami, because I just know that I'm just going to be let down.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, I actually, have you seen Cobra Kai? Have you watched any of that?
I never have. Everybody has told me for literally like, it seems like a decade to watch that.
Yeah, I don't remember talking to you about it, but I'm sure you've seen The Karate Kid, right?
Yeah, I've seen all the Karate Kids.
Okay, so I haven't seen the one with Hilary Swank, and I haven't seen the one that was a reboot with Jackie Chan.
That's the only one I actually haven't seen either. Is that one? I have it, but I've never watched it.
So those are the only two I haven't. Those are the only two I haven't seen. But I saw the ones with Danielson.
Yeah, the three Ralph Macchio ones.
Yeah. So Cobra Kai. Do you know the premise of it?
I just know that it's kind of like them coming back as older guys, and the bull is not as bad as he used to be.
I'm not gonna lie. I like Cobra Kai. People might want to crucify me for this, but I like the story of Cobra Kai better than I like the Karate Kid, because it's told from the perspective of Johnny Lawrence, who was Daniel's adversary in the first movie. Mm-hmm. And it gives you a different look as to what happened in that first movie. And it's almost like you know, we were just, we had it all wrong watching that first Karate Kid, and Danielson's actually an asshole, and Johnny Lawrence is actually a pretty decent guy. He had kind of a rough upbringing, and karate was his outlet, and he was a super good fighter, and his coach was a good coach, but he was also kind of a douche, which led him to, you know, telling him to do an illegal move or kind of a cheat on Daniel near the end and messing him up and blah blah blah. But he really at heart is a good dude. And he loves heavy metal. He loves Coors. He's he loves you know, American made cars and everything. He's a he's just a solid good dude. He's just
an all-American boy. You know, he's listening to Y&T.
That's right. And so anyway, yeah, it's a, you know, it fast forwards all the way to like he's supposed to be like 40 or something, and he sucks. He just sucks at life. He's got you know, he drives a piece of crap car. He's a handyman who just like keeps like getting crap jobs and not being able to make any money and blah blah blah. Well, he ends up like somehow, some way starting Cobra Kai back up, and he becomes a sensei. And basically from there to the end of the show, because it is done now. They finished it with they finished the last season this year or something.
I think so, yeah.
And really good ending for sure. I love the first season. The second season was okay. It got really, really cheesy. And I don't mean like 80s action film cheesy. I just mean like really lame cheesy, in my opinion, of course.
Did it get soap opera-y as it went on?
It just, there's a lot of the teenage drama, which I could care less. You know, like I think it's really annoying.
Did it feel like a CW show?
Huh?
Did it feel like a CW show?
No, not quite that. Like that. It just
it didn't have like there's a guy in there be like, okay, now how does this appeal to the 14-year-old girl?
Oh, I think there's some of that in there, but at the same time, it's just like I think they had to do it because, like, for one, it went from being a YouTube show. It was on YouTube, I guess.
I guess that's right. I think
and then it became a Netflix production.
Well, because I think what it was, because I totally forgot about that. Now you mention that. I think when YouTube first started doing their kind of a streaming service, in a sense, I guess you would sort of say.
Yeah.
That was their big, like, one was like, we got Cobra Kai, this Karate Kid sequel thing. Yeah. And I totally spaced about that, but I think that was almost like their launching, like, streaming show.
But yeah, so after becoming a Netflix production, I think they had to throw in a little bit of that kind of teenage drama in there, which I hated that. But what's hilarious, it's almost like a real life Power Rangers kind of thing, because, you know, like there's going to be conversations between people, and then all of a sudden it's just everybody knows karate and everybody's beating the crap out of each other, like in grocery stores and malls and in warehouses, and it's like you've never seen some you know, like. It's almost like everybody just knows karate. It's like, you know, the U.S. has become like China or something, you know.
Yeah,
it's just kind of racist, but I just expect, you know, everybody knows, you know, karate in China, but but anyway, no.
Until British people show up, because that's what happened in like the 17 and 1800s. The British people are like, no, you stop that now. No more of that kung fu kicky dick, you know. But and that's literally how the triad started. That's actually they started to protect martial arts, and then next thing you know, they got into crime. That's how it all goes. You're doing something good, and next thing you know, now you're you know, pretty much holding down like blocks of cities and so on like that, you know.
But yeah, so that little rundown was more or less for you because you haven't seen it, but worth watching. Power through those crappy teenage scenes, but ultimately the beginning's good and the ending is very fitting as well. It's a great. The guy Johnny Lawrence, he gets a lot of redemption. But anyway, I bring that up because Johnny Cage, I know he's based off of Van Damme, if I'm not wrong. So he's based off of Van Damme, but at the same time, Van Damme's not exactly like a super douche. Well, I don't know. In light of recent events, I guess he's going to court over a sexual assault allegation or something. But
in the 80s, I felt like everybody had one of those. Guys, girls, dogs, it didn't matter.
But I guess what I mean is I don't remember Van Damme in the media being like a womanizer, but I don't know. It's not he doesn't seem like a cheesy one-liner womanizing type of outwardly expressive guy, whereas Johnny Cage is Absolutely that. But anyway, the reason why I bring up the Cobra Kai stuff is because Johnny Cage in this film, I feel like he's a lot less of a douche than they make him out to be in the games. He's super silly, you know. He's ridiculously cool in the sense that, you know, everyone who's not him is going to think like this guy's a douchebag, you know. But he's very much. It reminded me a lot of that Cobra Kai. It reminded me a lot of Johnny Lawrence in his like the fact that he's really not a bad dude. He's actually dude's pretty cool. He you know, he learned karate because he was getting beat up at school. Johnny Cage, I mean, you know, getting the crap beat out of him all the time. So he goes and learns karate. And you know, the minute that dude once he becomes like super skilled, his bully comes up and tries to bully him, and he's like, I don't think so. And breaks his arm. And
Mortal Kombat style too.
Exactly, like X-ray attack.
Yeah.
And that's what I just, like I said, I was thinking that. And anybody who's seen Cobra Kai is going to watch this and be like, that's cool. He's like Johnny Lawrence, but he's got powers. And that he doesn't realize until later, but
yeah, you know, that probably makes total sense too. That would kind of come from there, because I even think just you bring up the Johnny Cage like origin and so on like that. And initially in Mortal Kombat, you know, it was going to be Jean-Claude Van Damme. Then he turned it down, and then they sort of kind of made Johnny Cage a sort of a parody of it. But I think as Johnny Cage has gone on throughout time, like his character's kind of like changed. He's always been, of course, the movie star and so on like that. But I think he became more kind of funny and you know, kind of goofy in the later days.
Well, like in Mortal Kombat 10 and 11, he was not goofy. He was, I mean, inherently, I think Johnny Cage is also going to have that kind of like chip on his shoulder that's not necessarily like the usual chip on your shoulder, but he's always going to have that part of him that is that cheesy Johnny Cage. But at the same time, you know, it's like a tattoo, you know. It's going to be pretty hard for him to get rid of that. And but yeah, he really did have a change of character in 10 and 11. He becomes this super professional. Like, I thought it was kind of silly at first when I started playing 10, and I'm like, Johnny Cage is like some commander, like military, you know, guy. Like, what the hell? But then I'm like, you know what? Stranger things have happened. It's not bad. And then in 11, of course, you got both Johnny Cages. You got the mature older Johnny Cage, who I guess is divorced from Sonya Blade. And then you've got the young Johnny Cage, who's, you know, the same old Johnny Cage that you used to. And then you've got several Johnny Cages in Mortal Kombat 1, or at least the one where he's like from the army or something, like the World War II.
World War II version Johnny Cage.
That was pretty hilarious.
Yeah. And I think that the Johnny Cage, I think once kind of Deadpool, and I even feel like Ant-Man, I feel like there's a lot of that kind of humor that's kind of like embedded in like the modern version of Johnny Cage.
He's that average guy, and yet he's also not average. He's very much above average. I was saying this to a friend of mine when I was waiting for my wife to get off work the other night. One of the guys in the kitchen, we talk about this stuff all the time. Always talking about our podcast. But I said, you know what, man? Johnny Cage is probably the most important character in Mortal Kombat. And he was just automatically like, yes. And I think a lot of people would disagree with me. I kind of said it half jokingly, but I think he's a pretty dang important character to the whole series.
Well, you know, realistically, you know, I would kind of say if you had to take the Ryu and Ken being like the main characters of Street Fighter, you know, it's easy to kind of go, oh, well, the Ryu and Ken, just because of like, you know, gameplay wise of them being a carbon copy, at least a palette swap. You go Scorpion, Sub-Zero. I'm like, yeah, but those are the anti-hero characters in a sense. No. The Ryu and Ken is literally Luke Cage is Ryu, the serious one, and so on like that. And Ken is Johnny Cage, the fun, kind of rich one, and so on like that. And together, they make up the team. You know, you combine it with the anime trio of Sonya, and there you go. That's your three main characters, you know. Once again, Sub-Zero and Scorpion, they're more the side
characters.
Yeah, they're the side anti-hero kind of characters is what they both are.
That's like Wolverine and the X-Men.
Yeah. He's not the main character, you know what I mean? It's Cyclops is the one leading that, you know what I mean? Wolverine's just the one who gets, you know, he gets all the fan mail, just like Scorpion and Sub-Zero. But yeah, going into this Mortal Kombat Legends one, it's kind of cool because it does sort of like I don't know exactly where this is. I know what year it's supposed to take place, but I'm trying to think of which, in a sense, Mortal Kombat era is this supposed to meld in with, because this takes place in about give or take mid '80s, so it actually lines up to be perfect to being like a prequel.
The plot here says around Christmas in the 1980s.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that part, but I was
Not
trying
a
to think
particular
about
year, just
which Mortal Kombat it takes place beforehand.
Oh, I see what you
Now,
mean.
time-wise, it lines up better to being Mortal Kombat 1 in 1992. If that tournament took place then...
So, I was wondering that myself, the whole movie, and they actually kind of give it a hint. So, it's a prequel to the first Mortal Kombat Legends animated film.
Yeah,
because at the end when he's driving away, he's talking about, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to this island and fight in this tournament.
Yeah, and I know they do mention that, but that seems like unless I'm trying to think, does that Mortal Kombat Legends Scorpion's Revenge take place in 1992 or 3 like it's supposed to, or is that one take place in 2000 and whatever 19 or 20 when that comes out? Because that makes the cage match quite a bit of a jump away. That's the only reason I throw that out there. But
oh, you know what? So, yeah, I'm just reading the end of that plot synopsis. Cage becomes a successful action star thanks to the strong performance of Ninja Mime, of course.
Yeah,
and
which you get to see Ninja Mime in this movie, which is cool.
That's the best Johnny Cage there is Ninja Mime. Yeah, mime the gap. The sequels, but his career eventually falls apart. He's later seen packing his car, preparing to shoot his new film on a remote island. So, yeah, it's not really specific, but I would guess that years have passed.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe that's all it is. As I said, but maybe the Scorpion's Revenge movie could take place in the mid '90s. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it could be something like that. It doesn't specifically say either. I feel like there's some stuff that kind of gives it away that it's not, because I want to say Johnny Cage is using a normal or a modern day cell phone, not a big thick cell phone or anything like that. It's like those small. I know I'm nitpicking these really small things of like how this all lines up, but
no, I get it.
If not, it's like a 25-year gap. It's like all of a sudden Johnny Cage is doing this movie here at age, let's just say 25, and then 25 years later he's 50 years old, and
exactly
Scorpion's Revenge.
It's pretty weird.
So
that's kind of like, gosh, talk about age gaps and weird age things. So you're a Star Wars fan. I'm a Star Wars fan. One of my favorite things about Star Wars is not even one of the movies at all. It's the Clone Wars series, the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch. I think there's some fantastic stories told in that whole series and everything. And one thing so Disney didn't have anything to do with that Clone Wars show up until the very last season.
Yeah, because it's still George Lucas era.
Yeah, and then it went into the Bad Batch. Of course, Disney did that. But anyway, one thing that they didn't do very well is carrying over with those live action shows. They had characters return that were in that Clone Wars show looking exactly the same, and they were like Bo-Katan is a Mandalorian female warrior. And she was in the Clone Wars show, and she's supposed to be, she looks like she's about 25, 30 or something in that show. She comes back and she doesn't look that old. And she came back in the Mandalorian show, which takes place from when she was in the Clone Wars, something like almost 30 years later, so this woman should be like in her 50s or 60s or something. Meanwhile, she's like flying around. Her hair's perfect. Her skin looks great. She looks like a young woman, and she's taking care of business. And it's like, this doesn't make any sense. The same thing with Ahsoka Tano. The same thing with a lot of characters. It's kind of funny. It's like, did you guys really think about this here? But
yeah.
Like, I just enjoyed the show.
Yeah, well, and I always try to do a weird thing where I try to piece things together, even if it's like when people, because some of the people will say some stuff, you're like, oh, that one's like out of canon. Like, no, everything's in canon. We're just gonna find a way that it fits. That's how I feel like it's like one of those ones. I'm gonna make this puzzle piece work.
Oh yeah.
In worst case scenario, we'll just use an Elseworld story to explain it. But everything in my book is canon.
Well, it's like I'm sure you have seen or remember. that one line, not Star Wars, Marvel series of comics. They started, I think, in the 80s, and I think they might still do it. The What If.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was multiverse before there was a multiverse.
Yeah,
You know, if you really think about it, because it's all things that aren't normal. It's things that are out of like, oh, you know, this is in that version. It's like, I don't know why they didn't, you know, just think of that sooner. Like, well, I mean, the possibilities are endless. You know, if we just call everything What If or the multiverse.
Yeah, because DC had the same thing with the Elseworld stories too,
Yeah.
and so on like that. You know, so you had those there, but well, trying to piece it all together and get back into it. Johnny Cage, it's in the 80s. I'm just going to say it's a prequel to Mortal Kombat 1, the video game.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most logical thing. So it's a prequel to 1992 Mortal Kombat, you know. So here he is, you know, he's in Hollywood, he's doing movies. Things are pretty good at this point. It's not like Johnny Cage where, you know, he's kind of broke and so on like that. You know, he shows up here. He was bullied as a kid. He learned the martial arts. They have a cool training montage too. And I got to say this.
Oh, yeah.
The music in this movie's fucking awesome.
Great.
I love
I
it.
kept thinking it was, at first I thought it was Michael Jackson, to be honest. The the voice, it sounded really reminiscent of older Michael Jackson, but then I'm like, oh, it's not Michael Jackson. But,
Yeah, it kind of has a mixed match where it feels a little bit like kind of Vince DiCola, who does like a lot of like the Transformers and a lot of those Rocky movies and so on, like that kind of theme stuff. And then there's just some cool montage, you know, songs. Like the tunes are great in it and so on like that, you know. So even like when, you know, Johnny Cage has like his kid montage where he's learning martial arts from the guy who looks like a Chuck Norris type martial arts instructor, which I think's badass, you know.
looks like Chuck Norris from, what was it, Enter the Dragon, or where he fights Bruce
Return
Lee.
of the Dragon. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of has that look there. Even has kind of Chuck Norris and like the Karate Commandos, but with the blonde hair instead.
Yeah.
You know, so he's there. He's learned martial arts. You know, he of course fights his bully, takes him on, so on, and then he decides to get into acting, and that's how he kind of gets here. And he's doing pretty good. He's doing Ninja Mime, and I like when they show the Ninja Mime because they got this cool like filter
Like
over
a
it.
phantom.
Yeah, so he's got that, and it's just like this action movie. It's in like the subway tunnels of, you know, New York and so on like that. So it's got that grittiness, you know, and just cool to see that because like throughout the games, you always see Ninja Mime in the background. You hear about it.
Posters. They
Yeah.
talk about it and whatever. And yeah, that's pretty dang hilarious.
You know, and then Johnny Cage has this assistant guy with him the whole time who he kind of just like berates and what's his name, Chuck?
Yep.
Yeah, that's right, Chuck. There's a line I love where it's like he goes up, he's like, "Hi, he's like, no times for introductions, Chuck."
Yeah, exactly. He's about to say Chuck, and then he just says it anyway.
Yeah, he just did it, and so on like that. And lo and behold, he sort of gets kind of trapped into this kind of world because in order to finish Ninja Mime, his co-star Jennifer, and they never mentioned the last name for a good while, but she goes missing, and Johnny Cage decides to take it on his own.
Yeah, she's an actual actress.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Once you get further into it, you learn that his co-star is Jennifer, and there is a big Jennifer from the '80s. You know, Jennifer Grey, which I always think of first and foremost from Red Dawn. That's where I always think of her in. You know, I know Dirty Dancing's the big one, of course, and she's also in Ferris Bueller.
Yep.
But to me, Red Dawn is that is my movie of like choice for her.
Oh yeah, no, I was like, oh wait, what, you know, but because I kept thinking like, you know, why aren't they saying this woman's last name? But yeah, no, that was pretty great. I loved how everyone they did a good job fooling me at first. His agent, which was
Gilbert Godfrey?
Yeah,
Which I almost want to say this might be his last movie.
I think it was. I think it was his last role. But I loved how ends up being a demon, or another realm. I don't know if they call him demons in another realm, but he's a revenant, maybe is what they call him.
Yeah, the Shinnok ones.
Yeah, one of the Shinnok demon revenant things. But we'll just, for the sake of the video, they're demons. He ends up being a demon. He ends up, which I don't know why. I just thought it was hilarious that Godfrey ends up being, is his agent for one.
Yeah.
And then ends up being a demon. And
the total 80s agent too. He's got the ponytail, he's got the glasses, the mustache, like well, like 80s, but like he like faded in from the 70s and whatnot like that. Just swears the entire. I feel like Gilbert Gottfried's like, you want me to come into a cartoon and just swear the living daylights out?
Oh yeah,
I'll do it.
Man, it's hilarious. That guy has a totally different voice too than the voice he does for his acting.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I was gonna
I
look
watched
at
a
that.
video where he was talking normal. Sounds like a totally different person. That it's like a falsetto that he does, but instead of for singing, it's for acting.
Yeah.
Hilarious. But yeah, the he's a demon, and then the other guy who is not his agent, but like his, I don't know, manager or something. They only show him in the beginning of the film. The guy who told him not to eat red dye because it was going to kill
Oh,
him.
yeah, yeah. That guy never comes back. That's kind of
He's a demon. Everyone that he's working with is a demon. And
well, the joke sort of is because he's in Hollywood, it's filled with demons
Yeah.
and things like that. Because so it's like that Shinnok has literally like manipulated all of Hollywood, and especially the '80s variation of
like,
it.
of course he is.
Yeah,
And yeah, so he goes and he's trying to find Jennifer, and he Jennifer ends up being well, he runs into, he goes to Jennifer's house with Chuck. He ends up scaling her fence, goes into her mansion, and instead of Jennifer, he finds Ashra fighting some girl called Kira.
Kia. Yeah, because I had to look up all these characters in here, and it's like this movie actually. Because I was like, did they make some of these characters up? I'm like, no,
I think Kia was made up.
No. She's super deep dive. They're pulled from Mortal Kombat Sub-Zero Mythologies.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So Kia, and then as we get farther on, Serena is also in there, and so on. And I think the third one, because they're all the Brotherhood of Shadow, which is like, because Mortal Kombat Mythologies was kind of the initiation story to get Shinnok prepared for Mortal Kombat 4. So it's just one of those ones when you kind of put that all together, you're like, oh, this movie actually is like extremely deep diving some of these characters.
Oh yeah. Gosh,
I think Jataka, I think, is what the
yeah.
the third. Well, I'm pretty sure Jataka is that third girl that leads him into the magic place.
Yes, she does. So yeah, he goes to that party or whatever that ends up being pretty much a front, I think. And Jataka meets him because he goes in there trying to get access, like undercover. He's got the little hearing thing in with Chuck on the other end.
Well,
and
I was gonna say, before you go too far, you backpedal a little bit, because the other main character that he meets right at this when he's at Jennifer's place and they're fighting and everything like that, and we kind of. She's fighting Kia. Is you got Ashra from Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, I guess, or Deception was the first one she appears in. Which I think that's actually another cool choice too, because you don't see a whole lot of her either, and the fact that they bring her in here and whatnot. And at first, Johnny Cage has no idea. He thinks that she's bad and so on like that. She just thinks he's crazy and whatnot. And you learn that she's on a mission from Lord Raiden.
Yeah. I was as pleased as I was displeased to see that, actually, because I'm just thinking, like, Raiden, come on, dude. Like, can't you do any of this shit yourself? Like, instead of having other people do it, that they end up just dying because you're just like, here, go do this while I go consult with the elder gods.
Yeah, go consult with the elder gods. He rolls like a couple pairs of dice, pulls out the tarot cards.
Yeah, and then, but yeah, I'm
flips
like,
the coin.
But yeah, then you see, there were in one of the other movies, I was thinking about him talking like, God, I think it was in the first Mortal Kombat. I think it was in Scorpion's Revenge, where Liu Kang's talking to him like, "Why do you keep this guy around?" or something. And I feel like I remember Raiden saying like, "There's more to him than you know."
Yeah.
Which is interesting. But at the same time, being a prequel and Johnny Cage beating the crap out of Shinnok, you'd think that the tournament wouldn't be so weird to him.
Yeah, see, that's the other thing that kind of throws it off too, is that like, in just the continuity, is the fact that Johnny Cage, you think by this point would be so used to it would not be a weird thing, because he's literally as fresh as can be off the boat on Scorpion's Revenge. But in this one here, it's like, obviously you just fought Shinnok out of all things.
Yeah, I know.
Shang Tsung's gonna seem actually kind of basic after that.
No kidding. Yeah, I mean, he didn't just win. Like, yeah, he got beat up a little bit, but you'd expect to. He's a god. But I mean, once he, got back in the fight, I mean, like he annihilated Shinnok. Yeah. And it's like, you think about the Battle of the Realms, or I'm sorry, Scorpion's Revenge and Battle of the Realms, where he was just kind of a comic relief. It was, it wasn't, he didn't have as much focus as like Liu Kang and Raiden in Battle of the Realms, being human and just not knowing how to fight.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's that was something that I thought about. I'm like, I don't think I thought about this one, but
Yeah, because that's why I don't think this one ties into Scorpion's Revenge. I think there's too much stuff that kind of throws it off in that. Like, I can believe that it'll tie into Mortal Kombat 1992.
Yeah.
The very first one. I think that
does
seems like a
make more
logical
sense.
place because in that game, you know, he's in the tournament, he's got the powers already, and so on like that. He's pretty confident. He's not. I mean, I know we're looking at the arcade game, but you know, like in
Yeah.
a sense, I feel like I can picture that Johnny Cage being like, yeah, okay, I've seen some stuff before.
I like the fact too that he's apparently got blood of the gods or whatever. Like he's got divine powers. Like, you know, you got the people like Baraka. It's not like he's got powers really. He's just a fucking monster with these sword arms. You know, you got Devora. No real powers there. She's just a bug humanoid that can do a lot of nasty stuff. Scorpion, Sub-Zero, they got powers that are pretty cool. You don't really know where they come from. I kind of look at them like Jackie Chan Adventures. They must have some talisman or something. That, I don't know if you ever saw that.
Yeah, I did. That's why I love the reference.
That's what it makes me think, because I'm like, you know, that's cool. They got those powers, but I mean, how?
Yeah.
Same thing with Liu Kang. I don't know if that's ever explained, like where his monk powers come from, but
No, I feel like that is one of the. It's weird because Mortal Kombat always has, I think, the most defined story and characters out of all the fighting games and so on like that. But I feel Street Fighter almost explains those powers at least a little bit better than like they do, because it's like, yeah, like, you know, Ryu and Ken have to go train, you know, for many years and try to learn the secrets of the Hado and all that kind of stuff, and that's how you get the Hadoken and so on like that. And actually, strangely enough, a lot of the characters in Street Fighter don't have as well. Some characters have powers, but like not all of them do, I guess you would sort of say. You know, but in Mortal Kombat, like everybody does. It's like kind of like Sonya. You know what I mean? Like, does that energy ring come from a gadget? Does it come from?
yeah, exactly. I wondered that for a while.
Yeah, you know, I feel like as later days have kind of come on, it's kind of like, oh, it's sort of like it's a gadget or something like that.
Kind of, yeah.
You know, but yeah, it's like so many things. It's like I think it's like when they're putting together Mortal Kombat, they're just like, well, we want everybody to have a projectile, and like it doesn't have to make. It's just, you know, fantasy, sci-fi. We'll just make it work, you know.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. No. You know, but that said, I do like that you learn how Johnny Cage has his power. Like, you know, Mortal Kombat 1 and 2. Was he in 1?
He's in 1, yeah.
He's in 1. Yeah, of course he is. I don't know why I felt like I didn't remember him from one of those.
And he's in 2 because the only people that aren't in 2. Yeah, he's not in 3.
That's
I don't think. He's in. No, because I don't think he's even in Ultimate 3. I think he's not again until Trilogy, because they had to take out his nut punch move because they never made any animations for it in those games.
I just I'm thinking back on like just those first 2 at least, you know, and that green, you know, like zippy kick that he does, and you know, you think about and those little green balls that he throws,
chucks them,
and you know, you wonder like, what is that? What the heck is that? And excuse me, but finally, no, it's explained. He's got god powers, literally. No, he's not a god. It's just you know, descended upon him a little bit, but pretty neat.
Yeah, it's like that little bit, just like that. That's just all I need. Just give me a little bit of explanation. You know what I mean? You know, it's kind of like what Stan Lee always said about like the characters. He's like, it's like it doesn't have to be maybe necessarily right, but just at least give it an explanation. Like, how does Thor fly? Well, he spins his hammer really fast and lets it go, and then that's how he takes flight. It's like, you know what I mean? That doesn't make total logical sense, but at least it's like, oh, okay, I get it. Okay, it's not like he just takes off flying like Superman, where you're like, well, then how does he fly? You know what I mean?
That's like I think we talked about it in the Battle of the Realms, but one thing that we were laughing about was near the end when Liu Kang, dragon form, whatever, was fighting Shinnok. He that Shinnok, the one hybrid, whatever. He all of a sudden Scorpion and Sub-Zero appear out of nowhere to help him out, which was kind of hilarious in a way. But you know, it's that same thing like Iceman from X-Men, like making those giant ice roads, like, slides. It's like, where is that connected to?
Yeah, like the farther he goes out on it, it's like it's going to get heavier and heavier. You know.
Yeah. But hey, once again, it's Mortal Kombat. whether or not it's more, it's whatever, you know, like when it comes down to being one of those animated films, a fantasy, a sci-fi, action, whatever, it don't matter as long as it's cool, as long as it's fun.
Yeah, that's always the key
It's
thing,
kinda
the fun
funny.
factor, the fun factor. But it is interesting to think about, you know. So, well, as we're going into this story here, so Johnny Cage is still looking for Jennifer, but he's finding all these Brotherhood characters and so on like that, which is still cool that they pulled that stuff out there because that's like one of those ones I had to kind of look up because a lot of these characters don't even appear like in too many of the games. Like that Kia character,
Yeah.
she never appears in
completely
anything
forgot about
except
that
for
character.
yeah, Sub-Zero. You can't play as her in anything, and even Serena, you can only play as. This is weird. She appears in Mortal Kombat Mythologies. The first game that she actually appears in that you can play as her is Mortal Kombat Advance on the Game Boy Advance.
Oh,
So, like in a sense, kind of like you would say almost a kind of a spin-off one, but it's kind of interesting they put a brand new character in a sense in there, or at least brand new you can play as. And then the only other one you can play as her is Armageddon. You know, and then I think she makes a cameo appearance in one or something like that,
I think she's playable in one, if it's the character I'm thinking of.
or maybe she was a DLC character. Then maybe she's one of those ones. That may make more sense then, because now I felt like, yeah, because I know she's in one for something, and then like in I think in 9 and 10 they appear in the crypt or something like that.
No, she has wings, doesn't she? In
No, I don't think she has wings.
Nitara is the character I was thinking of, not Serena.
Oh yeah,
Nitara is the one. She's like a vampire.
yeah. And she had that cameo in Scorpion's Revenge.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, but as they're kind of going through this thing, they see this kind of almost like satanic plot of like all of Los Angeles area. Like,
Yeah.
literally all the locations they go to. They find this map that's like a map of the stars, but then it's got all this like, you know, Greek lettering on the back. And it creates this giant pentagram across all of Los Angeles, from like the Getty's Museum to like the they go to like this magician's place that's actually a real place too, and they're like some creep, you know, magician's club, you know, some like you know, one of those eyes wide shut kind of like places, it feels like. And of course that's
Yeah.
where Johnny Cage finally starts to kind of realize what's truly going on, that Ashra's not bad, and that's who he's going to have to work with, and that this cult was going to try to get him in there. And then he sees all these demons and so on like that.
Man, that was super. That was a super suggestive scene where Jataka's like kissing him and stuff, and to get him to keep moving forward with her, you know. And that's when they went underground into the tunnels, and Chuck was losing him through the little comm. He's like,
Yeah,
"I'm losing
yeah.
you, Johnny. Where are you at?" He's like, "I'm. Where is this? A tunnel underground where it'd be really hard to find me?" Is that pretty funny? And yeah, and then she starts kissing him. No, come this way. It's totally fine, you know. And he stops, kisses him. They keep going. He stops. She sticks her tongue in his ear. That like, holy cow, what's going on here? And that's when Ashra comes down and starts beating the crap out of her. And
Of course, the first thing Johnny Cage does is he like big
her.
boots her like into the wall.
pretty hard because the wall cracks behind her.
Yeah, it's not like I was just like, hey, he's like, hey, what are you doing? Boom.
You need to stop hitting people, is what he told her.
Yeah, and she really just takes that kick like not really that big. It's just, she literally just got kicked extremely hard in the wall, but she just kind of gets up and goes like, whatever.
Oh man, I forgot about this, but I love too how Ashra more or less admits that she had a hard time against fighting him because of her attraction to him. She's telling Raiden that if it wasn't for his what the humans would call being handsome, and for his scent, that she would have been able to fend him off better.
Yeah, I know exactly. It almost sounds like a Johnny Cage joke from himself, but for some reason he says it and whatnot. You know, but I think that's where it keeps like this fun, like just the whole '80s vibe of that it's an '80s action movie, like literally like if it was a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie just turned up to like 11.
You know, it really makes me think in a way of Big Trouble in Little China, even though it doesn't take place in San Francisco and Johnny Cage's friend is not Wang. It's just got that goofiness. There's a guy, an American guy, he's just there, and eventually gets thrown into this underworld of nonsense.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of what happened. You know, like I don't know how Johnny Cage didn't get like PTSD from this like whole event. because it's like his world has just been kind of turned upside down, and he handles it miraculously. Everyone he's been hanging out with, except for Chuck, ends up being a demon, including Ashra, even though she's a nice demon. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just demons galore, and
I'd be questioning everything about my life at that point.
yeah, it's like, how did I even get here? You know what I mean? Was my Chuck Norris like martial arts teacher a demon? Like, come on. Yeah, so yeah, actually that's actually kind of true. It does take on a lot. Well, we always said that Big Trouble in Little China, that's sort of a lot of like that inspiration for Mortal Kombat.
But yeah, that's what I was gonna. Yeah,
But this one, like the more you mention it, it actually has quite a bit of that feel to it. Maybe like not at first, but the second you say that, you're like, oh, I see that all around in this movie here, and so on like that. And just with the characters and just the demons and just the fantasy stuff, and you have this regular guy. Well, regular guy isn't a movie star, but being thrown into all this stuff. And learning about it, but he takes it really well. Like, it's not, he almost takes it better than he does in the Mortal Kombat Scorpions one. Like that Scorpions one is still like questioning it like halfway into that movie.
yeah, that's the thing. Like, when he fought, it was one thing for him to fight Ashra and Kia. And then he totally like mauls Kia and like murders her, with the bus as he's chasing after Ashra.
Well, technically, the bus driver is the guy who kills him.
That is true.
He's like, they're stupid pigeons.
But yeah, so there's that. And then when he fights his agent, Guilford Godfrey, who ends up being a demon, and he kicks him out the window and he impales him, and he goes downstairs, and then he's it bursts into flames, and Johnny Cage is just like, all right, well, see you later.
Yeah, that happened.
Whoa, and like you said, this is the same guy as the other one. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a Johnny clone.
Yeah, I kind of have a hard time unless he just got amnesia or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, something
Knowing
like
Raiden,
that.
that probably wouldn't be out of the question, but. I just like to dick with him. That's why he's here, Liu Kang. Don't worry about it.
He must win.
Well, let me check my pocket watch again.
It's like, Raiden, do you know who he is, and do you know what he should win? Shut up and just win. I don't know. But yeah, no, that's again, I don't know how a guy like that handles all that. I mean, the guy, once again, he's just a cheesy karate master who does movies, and he's just blowing through this like it's yesterday's news.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's that one that like, because they've used that for a while, where Johnny Cage is always the guy who's kind of clueless, that like nobody's filled him in on what he's supposed to be doing, and maybe this one's like, well, let's just speed that up a little bit. Like he'll be clueless, but he'll come to terms with it a lot faster, and he'll have no problem doing a fatality on people left and right.
Oh man, and Jataka's death, that was pretty brutal.
Yeah, exactly. Catches on fire and everything, and then he kicks her head off.
I loved it too. Like, that was the first time you see a genuine reaction from him on anything. Because once he kicks her in the head, her head like comes off her spine. Of course, probably helped that she was melting from being on fire. But he kicks it off her spine, and then he goes, "Ew."
Yeah, exactly. Well, what's kind of the funny thing too is this movie actually, it takes a moment for actually the violence to kind of come into this movie. Like, like the other Mortal Kombat movies are just like violent the whole way through, and especially the third one or whatever, the last one we watched, the Snowblind, like that one is just filled to the brim of kind of like gory scene after gory scene after gory scene. Where this one, like, maybe it's even like it has that 80s, like, or I'd almost call it like a 70s, like build up, but like that still happens in 80s movies too, where like it kind of goes, and then at like the hour mark you start just getting copious amount of action and so on like that. This one's kind of like that too, and I guess in a somewhat of a way, because there is some still violent action, but like it feels like almost like the first like half an hour there's not much, maybe like a death here and there, but then it starts picking up as the movie goes forward.
It's like a more relaxing watch. It's laid back. The other ones are just like, I guess, what you would expect from Mortal Kombat. This is like if Mortal Kombat was also a massage spa. I don't know. It's like a gentler watch. Like you said, the action doesn't start right. Well, it does, but the violence, like the super violence, doesn't start right away. And then I do love how, he's looking for Jennifer for 2/3 of the movie.
Yeah.
And he finally finds her. And Jennifer is Serena, a demon.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like
Jennifer Grey is a demon.
Jennifer Grey, the actual actress, as in a character in the animated movie, is technically Serena from Mortal Kombat. Which is just a thing. And then, she's a demon here, and she's pretty much making this big sacrifice by, this pentagram area and whatnot. And everything's going to happen at Grom's Chinese Theater, and Los Angeles. And I always like in this movie, there's like they can't ever use like regular names, but like they kind of jokingly always kind of make like a wink at the camera, or even like Gilbert Godfrey he's like I got you a deal with the big man and stuff. And then Johnny Cage tries to go and say it, and it bleeps him out. I was like, why do you keep bleeping me out? He made movies like bleep bleep bleep, which I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be like Steven Spielberg is what they're like.
That's kind of what
that's the big man. You know what I mean? It's funny though, because the one thing I think is a little bit funny about that though is like, I've never seen Steven Spielberg make a martial arts movie.
Yeah.
When you think about it, like, I mean, the closest thing you got is Harrison Ford throwing a couple punches or something like that.
Get off my plane.
So that's where I kind of thought, like, I felt like it still works, but it's like you could have gone with like some real deep cut there, but like, then you might be going way too deep.
I kind of miss those films where, the portrayals of the U.S. presidents were also like tough guys. They
kick ass.
They'd start fighting people and doing that kind of shit. It's like,
what I mean?
Ain't never gonna happen.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like that's one of those ones. Like,
Independence
imagine
Day.
Joe Biden having to fight like off people in like the Air Force One. Gets hijacked. Sleepy Joe's got to take him out. I actually really kind of want to see that movie. He's just out of his mind, and it's either that or like you have one of those movies where he thinks he's fighting terrorists this whole time, and then it has one of those endings where it's like, no, Joe, you were just actually really hopped up on stuff and you killed the entire crew.
Either that or he's just been like comatose in a hospital for like 9 months, and it's just like what's going on inside of his head the whole time.
It's just,
it doesn't even have to be a hospital. It could just be the White House. It could have been his presidency. He's just sitting behind the chair in the Oval Office for like 2 hours, and that's what's been going on in his head.
He's been on TV this whole time. So as the movie's played out. But yeah, it's like they don't make those kick-ass president movies anymore. I don't know whatever happened to that. Realistically, Teddy Roosevelt was kind of our last like kick-ass president in real life, who actually was like decided he was going to go to the war.
Yeah, he actually fought in the Spanish-American War.
Yep.
In
the Rough Riders.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was in the Philippines.
Yeah, because that was the war pretty much where America just said, like, we need to go kick Spain out of the rest of their territories. Let's travel all around the world. We'll get Guam. We'll get the Philippines. We'll kick them out of Cuba. But for some reason, we don't keep Cuba. So many other territories. And that's how America got the Philippines. And that's why whenever you watch Philippine TV, it's really weird because it has a mixed match of Philippine, Spanish, and English all intermelded together. Yeah, it's really
Tagalog, strange. Spanish, English.
Yeah.
I worked with a guy who was Filipino for a little while. He was such a terrible worker. Not because he was Filipino. I should probably preface that. But because he smoked too much pot and would come to work hammered. And,
that would do it.
But yeah, it was a pain in the ass. He got paid a lot more than me too. But anyway, I digress. He would talk, and he'd be talking to me. He almost always talked to me in English. He was from Stockton, and he was in a gang. And
did you tell him you were in a gang too?
I should have. But he would usually talk to me in English. But then he'd get on the phone and he'd start talking. He'd go English to Tagalog. I don't think he ever spoke Spanish, but his sentences were always mixed up. And I'm like, what? And I think he was talking to me. I'm like, he's like, oh, no. Anyway,
no. That's what I just noticed. Is like from like you see like a Philippine show. Is it like the language is literally like weaves through like 3 different types there from 3 different. From being conquered multiple times, I guess would do it to you. But so yeah, but Yeah, Spanish American War. We don't get those kick-ass presidents. I can't remember how that exactly even related to Johnny Cage, but somehow, some way, we need more kick-ass presidents. In the world.
We were talking. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Grom's Chinese Theater. I'm trying to backpedal to see how we got to that, but I don't remember where we left with that. But
well, it was where we were at. Was basically he learned who Jennifer Grey actually was, which is Serena. She's everything that happened in the movie was manipulation. They tricked Johnny Cage into go looking for Jennifer at her house, which exploded, blew up. They knew that was going to happen. They planned it. They had him come back to Guilford Godfrey. They wanted him to give him back the map, I think. And I think from there they had to improvise a little bit because I think they weren't planning on him not giving back the map.
Yeah, because we never mentioned this. There's this. Well, we sort of mentioned the map, but the map's like the MacGuffin of this. Everybody wants.
Yeah.
This. Everybody's chasing after it.
It's a scroll that he goes and when he gets to Jennifer's house, he finds her, Ashra and Kia fighting over it. And Kia grabs it. She runs away. Ashra chases after her. And then she kicks Kia out of the car that she's in. She rolls up on her on a motorcycle that she jacked from some guy, Ashra. And then Ashra jumps off that bike, gets in the car, fights Kia, grabs a scroll, kicks Kia out of the car. The bus that Johnny Cage is on steamrolls over Kia and destroys her. and then yeah, that's Johnny Cage gets out of he tries to jump out of the bus onto the car because he saw one of his co-stars do it one time and it was no big deal, but he misses and but he luckily gets picked up by Chuck, who had his car.
Good old Chuck, who's got the Ferrari, got literally the outrun Ferrari / Miami Vice style.
And then that's when he rolls back up on Ashra, jumps in the car, kind of fights her, kind of doesn't, but whatever, grabs a scroll and then calls her a bitch and then jumps back in his car. And then they go start planning, like, what are we going to do with this?
Yeah, that's right.
That Johnny Cage immediately, after he thinks about it with Chuck, he's like, all right, there's only one thing to do. Cast someone else. Forget Jennifer.
Yeah, they're at the total end of the movie, but for some reason, yeah.
Yeah, and then Chuck's like, no, we got to go to the police. And then that's when, on the way to the police, that's when Guilford Godfrey actually says, like, no, you got to come to me. The big man wants to talk to you. And then that's where it goes back into everything we explained, where, he goes up there. He offers him a movie and some superhero role, and he doesn't really care and doesn't want to give the scroll back. And that's when the fight ensues with him and Godfrey and his agent. And then he turns into a demon, and then he kills him. And
I gotta say, you mentioned the superhero role as being the thing that they mentioned there, which is kind of a strange. Once again, if this movie takes place in, let's say, '86, the only big buzz coming up was when that Batman '89 movie was going to come out, because they talked about that for a long time, there and so on like that. So that would be the only logical. If there's a big superhero movie, is that the movie that Johnny Cage is supposed to be playing in? Is he's going to be Batman in this? He's going to be Michael Keaton? Granted, it's a demon telling you this, so you take it for a grain of salt, but
yeah,
because in the '80s, granted, there's Superman Quest for Peace, and something like that, but there's not tons of superhero movies yet until that '89 Batman movie comes out.
I remember there being a really old Spider-Man, but I don't know if that was a movie or
that was a
show.
TV show.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And there was, I think this was in the 70s, though. There was a really old Avengers movie. I think.
Because
about.
There's in the late 70s, they did 3 or 4. They were made for TV, but there's a couple Captain America ones. I have those on DVD.
I used to have those.
Avengers, and there's a Doctor Strange. And I think they kind of somewhat tied in with the Lou Ferrigno kind of Hulk, in a sense. That was capitalizing all off that. So and Superman, 76 came out. So there's a little bit of a late 70s kind of superhero boom, and then it kind of peters out. As I said, in the 80s, you have Superman Quest for Peace. You have Superman 3 technically still in the 80s. I think that's...
the 80s definitely wasn't the era for superhero.
Yeah, there's a Supergirl movie.
Era more for war and action flicks. Just...
Yeah. Yeah, because it's the greatest for action. You get all your Arnold, you get your Chuck Norris, Sylvester Stallone, Bruce
Dolph
Willis,
Lundgren.
Dolph Lundgren, you know, you come in like at the tail end, Wesley Snipes, even though that's more a little bit more
Yeah.
90s. You know, same with Steven Seagal. Yeah, you know, there's all sorts of stuff.
Kurt
in that
Russell.
time. Yeah, Kurt Russell too, you know, doing it. So like Mel Gibson, you know, all sorts of stuff. And you know, granted, that's what the Johnny Cage movie's kind of going with,
Yeah.
and so on. But
Oh gosh, we forgot the most important one.
as we swing all back into this here and so on like that, we get to the Grounds Chinese Theater. Of course, this pentagram thing that's been, you know, on their quest with the
Van Damme
and everything
was
like that. Yeah, old Van Damme, you know, so they're there, and, you know, this is where Johnny Cage fights Shinnok because he's been summoned and so on like that, you know, and then Ashra goes and fights Serena or whatnot throughout this, you know, and so that's our kind of final battle and whatnot there, and it's badass and so on like that. The action's there. Johnny learns that he's got the touch in a sense with his powers and whatnot. It's got great music playing throughout it and everything like that. You know, that's the whole thing. Is I almost want to look the soundtrack up on Spotify and see if they have it because like the tunes are really good. Like I thought that they're like excellent, you know, and then you combined it with like it has a little bit of that like Outrun kind of music / aesthetic too. Outrun as in the Sega game. But yeah,
I was not gonna lie, I was really surprised that Chuck didn't die.
yeah, no, Chuck doesn't die. He turns out to be a Mortal Kombat character later.
He ends up being mocap.
Yeah, exactly. Just, you know, so he becomes kind of the spoof character and so on, you know. Yeah, I know. I was almost kind of wondering if he would die, like, because it's just like, you know, there's even that part where like one of the demons is trying to hassle him and stuff. He's like, you what? You think you could torture me? Like he's like, I get paid to be tortured for a living, you know, or whatever he says. You know. So yeah, Johnny Cage learns that and so on, and then it kind of shoots him off towards the tournament. But yeah, overall, this one, I think these movies literally, they're all great. Like, I will say, out of all 4 of these Mortal Kombat Legends movies, I think they're all pretty darn close to perfect. It's almost one of those ones you could kind of say, if anybody said like they liked one or the other, be like, yeah, that makes sense. It seems like it's a personal preference. But I do think they kind of technically stack and get better and better each time.
Got the I think you got the playlist right here of I was looking for it. Mortal Kombat Legends Cage Max on Spotify.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to say
if they're the actual songs, then
it probably is. This day and age, things are kind of good. The only time that like finding soundtracks on Spotify is kind of tough is for older movies.
Yeah,
I don't know why. That's like the last like kind of like hurdle that like music needs to do to get everything on Spotify is for some reason good soundtracks. You know, it's like one of those ones like I'll just name 2 soundtracks that I like a lot that are not on there, and that's the Last Action Hero soundtrack and the Scarface soundtrack.
Oh.
So I own those ones. Sometimes you can find them on YouTube though, which is kind of nice. Somebody will up it there. But in my opinion, the Last Action Hero soundtrack has the best Anthrax song, or my personal favorite Anthrax song. Not on anything else.
Which one is it?
Poison My Eyes.
Oh, okay.
You know, it has a long ass intro, and I'm not big, but like all I'll say is like whatever. It takes like 45 seconds for that song to start up, but once it starts up, it is extremely good. It's almost like a couple songs in one. It's badass. But yeah, that's one of those ones where it's like it's weird how, or like, you know, another thing that bothers me is like the Space Jam soundtrack. There's only like 3 songs off that entire one on there. You know?
Oh man, the Last Action Hero soundtrack's on Spotify, but one of the songs not included on the playlist is Poison My Eyes.
Yeah, it's like
you can't play it for whatever reason.
No, it's like there's certain songs that are just locked off. I don't know why.
Bummer.
You know, but
I guess YouTube is probably your best bet.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, I own it on CD at least, and so it's like the same with the Scarface soundtrack too. It's like that one's not like, I think obviously you'll always be able to find like a couple songs, but like you can't find like the full soundtrack. But yeah, in a sense, speaking of even Scarface soundtrack, that's this one kind of, well, this one actually reminds me a lot more of, once again, like the Transformers soundtrack / like a Rocky movie kind of, or even like Kickboxer. A lot of the tunes kind of remind me of that Van Damme movie, because that has an amazing. They're the same dudes. That's
Yeah.
what the hell's that dude's name? He's not Vince DiCola is the guy who does the orchestral stuff. Well, you know, synthesized orchestral stuff, like Transformers and so on. But there's I'm trying to blank on the other dude, the guy who has like the song like The Touch, you know, and all that kind of, and yeah, I'm trying to blank, but whatever. great stuff there, and that's what this soundtrack really reminds me of, is all those kind of great jams and so on. But
It
yeah,
is good.
this Mortal Kombat Legends cage match, I think it's fantastic. I think the
It flows
animation
so well,
is
too.
slick as all can be. Yeah, the pacing's great, and there's never a dull, slow moment in it. And even just the kind of the look that it's got too. I like that it's got everything kind of has like this neon highlights to it and shading,
yeah.
which is kind of neat.
What I really, one of the things I think helps this movie so much, kind of like the Kenshi movie, but actually yes and no. This movie sets itself apart in more ways than one than all three of the other ones, in that it's only one story. So in Scorpion's Revenge, in Battle of the Realms, and in the Snowblind, you've got two stories in each one of those movies. You know, in Scorpion's Revenge, you got what's going on with Scorpion, and then the first tournament. In the Battle of the Realms, you've got that second tournament, and you've also got wait, was there?
Well,
Oh yeah, and then you have the Lin Kuei's story part of that.
Yeah,
And then in the Kenshi, I keep calling it the Kenshi movie. In Snowblind, you've got Kenshi's story. You've got the Kano story that you don't even realize is kind of its own thing as well. And then you've got Sub-Zero's story. It's kind of a trifecta of plots. And in the cage match, you've just got one thing going on. And I think that really helps it out because you've got less to worry about. Like, one thing that a lot of people don't realize with certain, not only with movies, but television shows and games, is that when you have too many characters, or the more characters you add, you really got to figure out what to do with all these people. Are they going to be a main character? Are they going to have a minor role? Are they just going to have a cameo? Whatever. Because if you give too many people, this happens a lot with franchises like this that are really popular, that have really popular characters, is people want to see them and they want to hear them, you know, and you got to make those decisions. And I'm sure they're tough to make. And that's why people are always bitching about, like, oh, they didn't even have Cyrax or Sector. They didn't even have this or that. It's like, yeah, but there's, you know, that's a lot to write. That's a lot of dialogue to write. That's a lot of scenes. And you can only make a movie so long, you know, where you got to start deleting stuff, cutting stuff. And sometimes it's not just for time. Sometimes it's for the consistency of the story. Sometimes it's for like, it doesn't get stale, you know? Because it doesn't matter how cool this movie is. You can get tired of it if there's too many freaking people giving their lines because they were a fan favorite character that they just threw in there because.
Yep. Well, I learned that even just with writing comics and so on like that, is just like, you know, you get too many characters like in a scene, not only do you have to like have them all have dialogue, but you have to make them like, why are they there? What are they doing? Like all this stuff. And then you kind of, there's a lot of times where there are scenes where it's just like, I just realized I'm like, the dialogue doesn't actually make a difference who says it. Just have one character go in there and say it, and it that's all you need. It's like, and then one, it makes it easier to draw. Two, it's like they're not just there taking up time and so on. And that's even like, that's like one of my big problems I kind of have with like a lot of modern TV shows. And I think once again that's why this Johnny Cage one actually does it well, because it plays like old school. Is that they always try to have like 4 or 5 different like stories going on, and it's like, dude, like, you know, it's like, and then your main character that you showed up for, it's like, dude, he's barely in it. You know what I mean? Like. You're like, well, what's going on? Like, you know, I don't care about these sub characters. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I want.
And honestly,
you know,
that's
the 2 stories is about fine. And once you start going, once you start having a bunch of them, it's like, dude, now it's like, why do I care?
And and that's honestly, that's got to be the one of my critiques on that first movie, The Scorpion's Revenge. And I don't have many critiques of it, but it is that, in that for a movie called Scorpion's Revenge, he didn't have as much screen time as I thought he'd have. He has
he's ironically kind of the side character in that movie.
He is. He really is.
He's the B story. You know.
Yeah. It's kind of like a sneaky way to make the Mortal Kombat tournament a movie again. You know, like Scorpion's Revenge, and then you're watching like, this is Mortal Kombat 1. You know, not that I didn't enjoy it, because I really did, but it's just, it kind of is what it is. Yeah. But the thing about this having a movie, show, whatever, that has too many characters reminded me of something from when I was like, gosh, in second grade, I think, first or second grade. I wish for the life of me I could remember what this was. I'll probably never know. It was one day at school where it was like the end of the day, near the end of the day, and the school just decided to play this. I don't know if when you were in school at that age, your school was hooked, like all the TVs could play the same thing at the same time, like to do like morning announcements or something like that.
No, we didn't have that kind of technology yet.
But that was in my school, but I was also in Stockton.
Yeah, I was just saying, Twainhart definitely didn't have that. I don't even know if we had a loudspeaker that even announced in the beginning. To tell you the truth, I think it literally came in
fishing line.
Yeah, it was about like that. I think literally a piece of paper came out and the teacher had to manually read it.
Yeah, but no, I always thought it was kind of weird anyway as a kid. I'm like, why am I watching these kids who speak poor English tell me what's for lunch? But it's kind of hilarious actually thinking back on it. But anyway,
today, Junior.
I'm not kidding. It was pretty. Thinking back on it, it makes me laugh. As a kid, I didn't know what I was watching. But no, there was a day where near the end of the day, their TVs came on, and our teacher said like, "Oh, we got something special to watch." I can only imagine it was going to be some stupid show that was going to tell us at the end, like, be nice to people, don't do drugs, like one of those things that they do in school. And but we never got to see what the content of the show was. Why? Because again, I don't know what this was. I wish I did. But all we saw was character after character after character coming out of the woodwork. Like there'd be a scene where it's like on a street corner and like characters, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, are just like poking their heads behind the wall, and like they start walking around, and Popeye comes out of nowhere, and it's like it's something you'd like dream of, like it kind of really reminded me of the Imagination Land episode of South Park.
Imagination,
where there's like I'm sure you remember like in that it was like a 3-part episode, I think. Yep. At least 2, where there's like a million characters from different franchises. Like that's all this was. They're just jumping out of nowhere. And as a kid, you don't think anything of that.
Well, it wasn't Who Framed Roger Rabbit, was it?
No, it wasn't.
Okay, because that one has a bit, or
No, this had like so many different characters, and it was like it had. There's no point on me explaining who was all in it because anyone you could think of was probably there. But before anything happened, and they weren't even done in like having characters jump out on screen, the bell rang and it was time to go home.
Before you got your answer.
No. And but it's like that just made me think like, yeah, when you got too many characters, like you're not going to get anywhere. But I mean, you'll get somewhere. It's just going to take you 5 hours, and then by that time everybody's gone home.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing, is that's where these Mortal Kombat movies were actually playing out pretty well, where, especially it's like, because, the Scorpion's Revenge, that one's just there to get it. It's almost like to get anybody caught up. That's what I feel like that movie sort of is. Yeah, it's the pilot. Hey, just in case, if this is your and I'll say this, if that's your very first Mortal Kombat thing you ever saw, you'll probably think that movie's pure amazing. That could be your favorite one. And I think just for us, it's like we've seen that story a few times. So it's like, it's just kind of like dress rehearsal in a sense. Not a bad thing, but, we've been here before.
At the time that came out, when it was the only Legends movie, it was my favorite Mortal Kombat film.
Yeah.
And that was
probably the best one.
It was a really tight race between Mortal Kombat, the first feature film, and Scorpion's Revenge, like neck and neck.
Yeah. Well, technically, I'll say Scorpion's. Realistically, if I pull out nostalgia and all that stuff that I have for the '95 movie, yeah, the Scorpion's Revenge is technically the better one. If you had to pick only one movie to show somebody nowadays who's never kind of do Mortal Kombat, you would hand Scorpion's Revenge by far. You know what I mean? I hate to sort of say it, but as much as I love Mortal Kombat 95, there's a lot of nostalgia riding, and you kind of had to been there too. Like that'd probably be a hard one for a kid to understand. Be like, yo, you don't get it. Like it's PG-13 because at that time period there was. A lot of the fans were underage. We weren't 17 yet, so how are you going to get them into the theaters? And so I get that decision there and so on. But, as going on the Mortal Kombat, Scorpion's Revenge, that's the way to kind of get somebody in the door, explain the core characters and the story and everything like that. But as each one kind of goes on, the 2, 3, and 4, more especially 3 and 4, that one kind of allows a lot of other characters just to be like, okay, let's just like focus on a few of these characters. We'll put some deep cut characters in here. We'll put Tremor in here. We'll put Serena in this one. And we'll really like let these kind of stories unfold, which is a bummer because like once again, that Kitana one, if that's the Mortal Kombat Legends 5, God, that sounds great because you could have had Kitana, Jade, Melina, literally just those three alone. If that was your three main characters,
Tanya.
Kitana, Jade, and Melina, like cool. I mean, if you want to, you throw Scarlet in there too. That's kind of like the fourth of those kind of.
Yeah, it'd be Kitana, Melina, Jade, Tanya, and Scarlet.
Oh yeah, Tanya. That's right.
In fact, I think Scarlet, to be honest, is not really included with the rest of them.
Well, because she didn't appear, because she was kind of like
she's another like female ninja-esque character, but she's like the other ones, Jade, Kitana, and Tanya are like, they're not sisters, but they're like all in the same like group. They're all the Edenians that are working out of the fucking palace or whatever you want to call it. I don't know.
Yeah,
Melina obviously is the Mongoloid,
I like Shao Kahn has all these daughters that aren't really his daughter.
Yeah, exactly. And then kind of related to the group is going to be Li Mei, but not really. And then, you got Scarlet that I think she was like an assassin that Quan Chi hires or something. I don't know. I don't remember. After all these characters, you start kind of forgetting like with the why are you here kind of thing. But
we're at like 100 plus Mortal Kombat characters now, so it's kind of ridiculous.
With some of them that are just like, you are worthless, like the guy Cobra.
That character's very. I thought he was generic for whatever Deception or Deadly Alliance, whatever when he came out in there. I was like, wow, this guy seems kind of like a little bit like he's just filling in a slot kind of thing.
There's a handful of those,
but at the same time, I was glad he came in that last movie.
Yeah.
To me, I love when they pull those kind of random ass characters that you wouldn't think, and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool.
There's another guy too. He wears a beret. I can't remember what his name was, but he's part of the Black Dragon clan or whatever. I do kind of remember that guy too, yeah. But no.
But just the idea of like, I feel like that Kitana one, that could have been a cool, like, oh, it's kind of like an all female, one of like, here's.
Yeah, it would have been awesome.
Yeah, it would have been badass. And it's a bummer. I hope that they do kind of come back because it's maybe just Warner Brothers Animation was just taking a little bit of a break because they even stopped doing the DC ones. They got that Batman Ninja one coming out, but beyond that, that's not like a Warner Brothers one. That's like a farmed out one. So I
don't know how you feel about Batman Beyond, but I wouldn't mind seeing like a comeback of that because I actually used to really like that show.
Great show. The fun one too is like just the Batman Beyond movie is extremely good. And it gets dark and it gets ballsy and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, so hopefully Warner Brothers is just taking a little bit of a hiatus, and then like maybe there will be some more of these Mortal Kombats, along with other DCU stuff and so on, because they're so good. These movies are so good. We shall find out. They kind of just came out under the radar. Warner Brothers never does a very good job of, I think, advertising any of this stuff.
No,
no,
they don't.
Like, I literally like have the Warner Brothers email list for this stuff, and sometimes in there it's like pushed down below. It's like, what are you doing? It's like I really don't know. It's like half there's a lot of movies that like I just stumble across. Like I almost want to say Scorpion's Revenge is one of those ones. I was just in a store and I was like, whoa, there's a Mortal Kombat. Yeah, and I just bought it. Like I was like, no word. It's like it's like. Granted, I think a lot of these things, this is something that's kind of lost in the modern day. Like, obviously, if we watch TV, and it was like back in the day where like you had to watch commercials and so on like that, and if you were just watching Fox or whatever, like Cartoon Network or something like that, they'd play an ad on there, and then you'd be like, oh shit, I gotta go get this. You know what I mean? But like, I think nowadays it's like, even as a company, where do you put an ad? Like, you know what I mean? People don't really see stuff, or they pay not to see stuff, or they block the ad. Yeah, so it's like, I think it's got to be so tough to try to get the word out sometimes more than you think. I always kind of say, Warner Brothers doesn't do a good enough job advertising, but I'm like, at the same time, I feel like they're probably fighting an uphill battle just to get it in front of people, But yeah, check out Cage Match and all the other ones. They're fantastic. I think just the Mortal Kombat-ness is fun. And if you love 80s movies, you really will like the Cage one. I feel like the only people that might not like this one, that like you said with the reviews, is if you didn't really like the 80s. If you don't really like the 80s and you don't really like Johnny Cage, which I don't know why you're going to see a movie starring Johnny Cage.
Exactly.
You don't like him. That's it. Because I can see there might be some people like, I only like Sub-Zero because he's serious, blah, 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 one of those kind of things. Like, I don't like any of the funny characters.
Yeah.
One of those, but whatever. It's good. It's worth checking out. So, check that bad boy out. Other than that, though, you can find all the good Old Man Orange stuff on YouTube and Spotify and so on. Till then, I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I'm Dave Candito.
And we'll see you some other time.